Welcome to Sleeping Times. Have you ever stopped to think that 2,000 years ago, people rushed to fast foods on the corners of Pompeii just like you do today? Marble counters serving steaming food, hurried customers eating while standing, irresistible aromas filling the streets. The Romans did not just invent fast food, they perfected it in ways that will surprise you. Today, we are going to walk through ancient streets and discover the secrets of the Thermopolia, the fast food restaurants that fed an entire empire, and you will realize that we are much more similar to the Romans than you imagine. If you are enjoying the content, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you do not miss any of our relaxing stories. Oh, and do not forget to leave a comment below telling us where you are watching from and what time it is there. It is always incredible to see how our community is spread across the world. Now, how about turning off the lights, finding a comfortable position, and preparing yourself for a delicious journey through time, exploring the perfumed corners of Pompeii and the forgotten flavors of ancient Rome. The sun has not yet fully risen over Pompeii, but the streets are already beginning to awaken with a rhythm you would recognize instantly. The smell of fresh bread mingles with the aroma of burning charcoal, while the first workers open the heavy wooden doors of their establishments. Can you hear it? The sound of ceramic striking stone, the low murmur of conversations in Latin, the soft crackling of fire being fed for another day of work. On the busiest corners of the city, something fascinating is happening. Counters of colored marble begin to be prepared. Earthenware pots are carefully positioned in perfectly measured circular openings. These are not restaurants as we know them today, with tables and chairs scattered throughout spacious halls. These are the Thermopolia, literally places where something hot is sold, and they are about to feed an entire city. Imagine for a moment, you are an ordinary Roman worker living in an insula, a multi-story apartment building. Your space is small, perhaps just 1 or 2 rooms shared with your family. There is no kitchen, there is no stove, there is not even a safe hearth where you can prepare a hot meal. What do? You descend the stone stairs worn smooth by time, turn left at the corner, and there it is, your favorite Thermopolium, already with smoke rising from the embers. Archaeology tells us a surprising story. In Pompeii, a city with approximately 12,000 inhabitants, more than 80 Thermopolia have been identified so far. This means that proportionally, there was one fast food establishment for every 150 people. Have you ever stopped to calculate how many fast food restaurants exist in your city per inhabitant? The comparison is striking. The Romans did not simply invent fast food, they transformed it into an absolute urban necessity. But why so many? The answer lies in architecture and economics. Most urban Romans simply did not have access to private kitchens. Cooking at home was a luxury of the wealthy who owned domus, single-story houses with internal courtyards, spacious kitchens, and slaves to prepare meals. For everyone else, the 90% of the population living in cramped apartments with inadequate ventilation, cooking was dangerous, impractical, and frankly unnecessary when there was a Thermopolium just a few steps away. Think about the structure of these places. The counter, called a bancone, was made of stone or marble, often decorated with colorful marble fragments inlaid into it, a technique called opus sectile. In it, circular openings accommodated large earthenware pots, the dolia, which were partially buried in the counter. These pots kept food hot or cool, depending on what was being served. It was ingenious. The heat from the embers below warmed the pots from bottom to top, keeping steaming stews hot for hours. The walls around these counters were not plain. They told stories. Vibrant frescoes decorated every available inch, ducks swimming in blue lagoons, chickens pecking golden grains, fish leaping from nets, wine amphorae tilted, pouring their ruby-red contents. These paintings were not merely decorative, they were the visual menu. In a society where most people could not read, these images said everything. Here you find fresh duck, here we serve the best wine, here fish from the sea arrived today. Have you ever noticed how modern restaurants use giant, illuminated photos of their dishes? How McDonald's displays images of succulent hamburgers above the counter? The Romans did exactly this 2,000 years ago. The psychology of selling food has not changed so much. Show what you have, make the customer's mouth water before they even order. But there was something more in these Thermopolia. They were not merely feeding stations. They were social centers. Workers would meet there before dawn to have the ientaculum, the Roman breakfast, usually consisting of bread soaked in wine or milk, accompanied by dates, dried figs, or cheese. Quick conversations about the day's work, gossip about neighbors, complaints about taxes. Everything happened there, standing up, while eating quickly before heading off to workshops, markets, construction sites. As the sun finally breaks the horizon and bathes Pompeii's streets in golden light, the Thermopolia are already in full operation. The rhythm is steady, almost meditative. Experienced hands serve generous portions of puls, a thick grain porridge, in ceramic bowls. Pieces of still warm bread are torn from larger loaves and handed over wrapped in simple cloths. Cups of wine diluted with water, the standard drink of any respectable Roman, are filled and emptied in seconds. Can you feel the rhythm? The constant flow of people coming and going, the tinkling of bronze coins changing hands, the continuous murmur of voices mixed with the sizzle of food being prepared. It is comforting, familiar. It is the sound of a city functioning, of people living their lives, of basic needs being met with efficiency and, surprisingly, with a certain affection. There is something profoundly human in all of this. The need to eat, to connect, to start the day with something warm in your stomach and a quick conversation with a familiar face. The Romans understood this. They built an entire infrastructure around this need. And as you close your eyes and imagine these ancient streets, you can almost hear the echo of those mornings, feel the warmth of those embers, taste that freshly baked bread. But what exactly did they eat? What were the favorite dishes? Which ingredients filled those earthenware pots? And how do those flavors compare to what we put in our mouths today when we stop at a drive-through or order delivery at 2 in the morning? Let's gently immerse ourselves in the flavors that filled those earthenware pots. Close your eyes and imagine. You are standing in front of a typical thermopolium on a spring morning in the year 78 AD. What do you see on the menu? Or rather, what do you smell? The first aroma that hits your nostrils is unmistakable. Garum. If you've never heard of it, prepare yourself to meet the most important and strangest ingredient in Roman cuisine. Garum was a sauce made from small fish, usually anchovies or mackerel, fermented in the sun with salt for months. The result? An amber liquid, salty, intensely flavorful, rich in umami. The Romans put garum on everything. It was their ketchup, their soy sauce, their universal seasoning. You might be thinking, fermented fish? That sounds disgusting. But wait, have you ever eaten Thai fish sauce, Worcestershire sauce, anchovies on pizza? All these flavors are direct descendants of Roman garum. Fish fermentation creates glutamates, the same compounds that make Parmesan cheese, mushrooms, and tomatoes so irresistibly flavorful. The Romans discovered this 2,000 years ago, never having heard the word umami. Now let's move on to the main dishes. In the first dolium to your left, there is puls. Don't be fooled by the simple name. This grain porridge was the staple food of millions of Romans. made from far, an ancient type of wheat, or barley, cooked slowly with water, salt, and, if you were lucky, a drizzle of olive oil. Sounds simple, it was, but it was also nutritious, cheap, and incredibly versatile. You could add vegetables, pieces of meat, cheese, herbs. It was the rice and beans of the Romans, the foundation upon which everything else was built. In the second pot, something more elaborate, cicer cum porris, chickpeas with leeks. Legumes were fundamental to the Roman diet. Lentils, fava beans, chickpeas, peas, all cooked slowly with aromatic herbs like coriander, cumin, and mint. These stews were dense, comforting, and could be eaten with bread or alone. Have you noticed how modern Mediterranean diets still rely heavily on legumes? The Romans were millennia ahead in nutrition. Further along, the aroma changes. Meat. Not just any meat. Pullus, chicken, porcus, pork, sometimes ovis, mutton. Meat was more expensive, so it wasn't in every thermopolium, but in the best ones, you would find pieces of meat cooked in rich sauces, seasoned with garum, wine, honey, and imported spices like black pepper. Yes, they had pepper brought from India through impressive trade routes. A recent archaeological discovery in Pompeii revealed something extraordinary. In 2020, archaeologists opened an exceptionally well-preserved thermopolium. Inside the dolia, they found not just residue, but identifiable food. Fragments of duck bone, remnants of pork, goat, fish, and, surprisingly, snails. Snails, the Romans loved cochlea, land snails bred specifically for consumption, fed on wine and flour to fatten them before being cooked. Do you eat escargot in fancy French restaurants? The Romans ate them on street corners, standing up at 7 in the morning before going to work. What is considered luxury today was street food 2,000 years ago. Doesn't that make you think about how our perceptions of fine dining versus fast food are completely arbitrary and cultural, but not everything was savory. The Romans had a surprisingly sweet tooth. Dulcia, sweets, it was sold in some specialized thermopolia. Honey cakes, dates stuffed with walnuts and covered with salt, a combination that has come back into fashion recently. Dried figs soaked in sweet wine. Sugar as we know it did not exist, so honey was the universal sweetener, and the Romans used it generously. And the drinks? Drinks were a category unto themselves. Wine, always wine, but not as you imagine. Romans rarely drank wine pure. It was considered barbaric. They diluted wine with water, sometimes heated it, calda, sometimes cooled it with snow brought from the mountains, an expensive luxury. They added honey to make maltsum, spices to make conditum, even seawater to create salty and complex flavors. There was also posca, the drink of soldiers and workers, sour wine or vinegar diluted in water, sometimes with herbs. Sounds terrible? It was actually refreshing, slightly acidic, and helped kill bacteria in the water, making it safer to drink. It was the Roman Gatorade, the isotonic drink of legionaries marching under the scorching sun. Have you ever stopped to think about how many of our modern beverages try to replicate these concepts? Flavored carbonated water, iced sweetened teas, sports drinks, all try to balance hydration with flavor, just like the Romans did with their mixtures of wine and water. The prices were surprisingly affordable. Inscriptions found in Pompeii show that a portion of puls cost about 1 as, the smallest Roman coin, a cup of wine cost 1 as, and a full meal with meat could cost 4 asses. For context, an ordinary worker earned about 3 sestertii per day, 12 asses. And this means you could eat 3 full meals a day and still have money left over. Compare that to the cost of eating out today. How many restaurant meals can you buy with a third of your daily salary? But there was a hierarchy, of course. Not all thermopolia were equal. Some, located in poorer neighborhoods, served only the basics: puls, bread, cheap wine. Others, on the main streets near the Forum, offered exotic meats, fresh fish from the sea, oysters — the Romans were obsessed with oysters — even flamingo on special occasions. Roman fast food had its own versions of luxury fast food and street corner food. And the seasonings? The Romans were masters of layering flavor. Beyond the ubiquitous garum, they used liquamen, a more refined variation of garum, acetum, vinegar, defrutum, reduced grape must, sweet and thick, and an array of herbs: coriander, cumin, mint, oregano, rosemary, bay leaf. Imported spices like pepper, ginger, and cinnamon were expensive but used in special dishes. There is something comforting in knowing that 2,000 years ago, ordinary people worried about the same things we do. Where am I going to eat lunch today? How much will it cost? Is that new place on the corner any good? Is the fish fresh? Culinary concerns transcend millennia without change. But how were these foods prepared? Who worked in these Thermopolia? And what were the daily challenges of running a fast food business in an ancient city, without refrigeration, without health regulations, without anything we consider essential today? Let's meet the people behind the counters. Close your eyes and imagine you are the owner of a Thermopolium. Your name is Marcus, and you inherited this business from your father, who inherited it from his father. 3 generations of your family have fed this neighborhood. You know every customer by name. You know who prefers more garum, who likes thicker puls, who always orders extra wine. You wake up before dawn. The city is still dark, silent, only the distant sound of stray dogs and the occasional night guard passing by. Your first task is to light the fire. This is not as simple as turning a stove dial. You need to clear yesterday's ashes, check if the embers still have any life, add dry twigs, blow gently until small flames begin to lick the wood. It is a meditative ritual, almost sacred. Fire is the soul of your business. As the fire gains strength, you prepare the ingredients. Your assistant, perhaps a slave, perhaps a young family apprentice, has already brought fresh water from the nearest public fountain. You fill the large bronze cauldrons, position them over the embers. The water will take time to boil, so you use that time to prepare the grains. Wash the far, separate the lentils, chop the leeks with an iron knife that belonged to your grandfather. There is delicate math here. You need to prepare enough food for the day, but not so much that it spoils. Without refrigeration, everything needs to be consumed within hours. You have learned through years of experience exactly how much to prepare. Mondays are slower. Saturdays, when the market is busy, you need double. Festival days, triple everything. The quality of ingredients is your reputation. You have trusted suppliers, the baker who bakes fresh bread every morning, the fisherman who brings fish from the Pompeii port, the farmer who raises chickens on the outskirts of the city. You pay a little more for quality, but your customers notice. They come back. They bring friends. In a city with 80 Thermopolia, customer loyalty is everything. But there are constant challenges. The biggest? Preservation. Imagine trying to keep meat fresh under the Mediterranean sun without ice. The Romans developed ingenious techniques: salt heavily, smoke, cook completely, and keep submerged in oil or garum. Even so, you need to buy fresh meat every day. If any remains, you use it the next day in heavily seasoned stews, where the strong flavor masks any beginning of decay. The second challenge: fire. You work with open flames in a wooden and stone building, surrounded by other wooden and stone buildings, in a city where fires are a constant threat. You are extremely careful. Never leave the fire unattended. Always have buckets of water nearby. Still, you know 3 Thermopolium owners who lost everything in fires in the last 10 years. It is an occupational hazard that keeps you up at night. The third challenge: competition. There is another Thermopolium just 2 streets away, The owner, Lucius, is younger, more aggressive with prices. He serves larger portions for less money. How do you compete? With quality, with consistency, with relationship. Your customers know you never diluted the wine too much, never served stale bread, never skimped on garum. That is worth something. But still, you see some old customers trying Lucius's place. That hurts. Have you felt that? The anxiety of a small business owner seeing a new and shiny competitor open across the street? The Romans felt exactly the same. Market economy, competition, the struggle to keep customers, none of that is new. It is profoundly, universally human. There is also the question of regulation. Yes, the Romans had regulations. The local government controlled weights and measures, checked the quality of wine, diluting too much was illegal, and imposed operating hours. Thermopolia could not stay open all night. There were sumptuary laws that tried to control where and when people ate and drank, especially to prevent establishments from becoming meeting points for immoral activities. Because you see, Thermopolia had a dual reputation. During the day, they were respectable. But at night, some turned into places where gambling happened, where prostitutes met clients, where fights broke out between drunken workers. Graffiti found on Pompeii's walls confirms this. Here, Gaius won 5 asses playing dice, or restituta, you are a thief, probably a prostitute who stole from a client. You, as a respectable owner, try to keep your establishment clean, literally and figuratively. You close early, don't allow gambling, expel problematic customers. But the line between restaurant and questionable bar was thin, and reputation could be destroyed quickly. Now let's talk about staff. If you are a middle-class owner, you probably have 1 or 2 slaves working for you. That sounds shocking to modern ears, but it was the Roman economic reality. These slaves may have been purchased or born into your household, or even people who sold themselves into slavery to pay debts. You treat them well, they are valuable, and replacing them is expensive. Some owners even freed loyal slaves in their wills. If you are poorer, perhaps you work alone or with family members. Your wife may help prepare food, your children may serve customers, your younger brother may fetch water. It is a family business in the most literal sense. Everyone works from dawn to dusk 6 days a week. Sunday, as a day of rest, does not yet exist. That will come with Christianity. The work is physically exhausting. You are constantly on your feet, constantly moving, carrying heavy pots, stirring hot cauldrons, cutting, serving, cleaning. Your hands are calloused, your back hurts, your feet swell. But there is a deep satisfaction in it. You are feeding your community, you are maintaining a tradition, you are building something that can be passed on to your children. There are moments of pure joy. When a regular customer compliments your new seasoning, when you finally perfect the lentil stew recipe your grandmother used to make. When, at the end of a long day, you count your coins and realize it was a good day, that you can buy that better wine you wanted, or that new fabric for your wife. Have you felt that? The satisfaction of a job well done, of satisfied customers, of a business that works? The Romans did. They took pride in their crafts, their skills, their reputations. It was not just about money, it was about identity, about purpose. But the day is only beginning. The sun is now high and the streets are getting full. The real rush is about to begin. Who are these people who fill your Thermopolium? What do they do? How do they live? And what does fast food reveal about Rome's social structure? Let's observe who comes through the door of Marcus's Thermopolium. The first customer of the morning is always the same, Quintus, a baker who works on the next street over. He arrives covered in flour, his eyes red with fatigue. He has been working since 3 in the morning when the ovens need to be lit so the bread is ready by dawn. He orders the usual: hot puls, a piece of cheese, diluted wine. He eats quickly, standing up, exchanging few words. In 10 minutes, he is gone. Soon after, a group of construction workers arrives. Pompeii is always under construction. New buildings, repairs after earthquakes. The region is seismically active, and small tremors are common. These men are muscular, tanned, loud. They order large portions, laugh loudly, make obscene jokes. Marcus smiles, serves generously. They pay well and are loyal customers. One of them, Titus, always asks for extra garum. "Put more of that magic sauce on it, Marcus," he shouts, and the others laugh. Have you ever noticed how certain customers have their specific orders? How the barista at your favorite coffee shop already knows your order before you speak? That intimacy between seller and customer, that small human connection repeated daily, is timeless. Marcus knows the preferences of dozens of people. It is part of what makes his work meaningful. Around noon, the profile changes. Merchants, scribes, small government officials arrive. They have a bit more money, a bit more time. They order the meat dishes, talk about business, about politics. One of them, Gaius, is particularly talkative. He always has an opinion about the latest city council decisions, about taxes, about wheat prices. Marcus listens patiently, nods at the right moments. Keeping customers happy is not just about food. It is about making them feel heard. There are also women, though fewer. Roman society was patriarchal, and respectable women generally did not frequent Thermopolia alone. It was considered improper. But working women, market sellers, laundresses, seamstresses, did not have the luxury of those social concerns. They come in, order quickly, eat even more quickly, and leave. Some bring small children clinging to their skirts. Marcus always gives the children an extra piece of bread. It is good for business, but it is also simply human. Occasionally, someone wealthier appears. You can identify them immediately. Fine wool togas, gold rings, personal slaves carrying their things. What are they doing in a thermopolium? Perhaps they are in a hurry, perhaps they are being adventurous, perhaps they are secretly tired of the elaborate food at their homes and want something simple, authentic. Marcus treats them with extra respect, serves on his best ceramic, offers his best wine. They pay generously and leave quickly as if embarrassed to be seen there. Doesn't that remind you of something? Celebrities being photographed at fast food restaurants, wealthy people posting about authentic street food. There is something universally appealing about simple, well-made food without pretension. Rich Romans felt that too. There are also the marginalized. Beggars occasionally appear at the door, not asking for food directly, but clearly hoping. Marcus usually gives leftovers from the previous day, bread that is becoming hard, the bottom of a pot of stew. It is not pure charity, it is also superstition. The Romans believed the gods watched how you treated the less fortunate. Moreover, in a small city, reputation is everything. Being known as generous is good for business. Soldiers are also regular customers. Pompeii does not have a large military garrison, but there are always some soldiers passing through, messengers, retired veterans. They have fascinating stories. Campaigns in Germania, Egypt, Britain. Marcus loves to hear them. It is his window to the world beyond Pompeii, beyond Italy. A veteran named Lucius tells stories of eating military rations. Butylatum, hard biscuits, lardum, bacon, posca, that sour vinegar drink. Your puls is a banquet compared to that, he says, and Marcus feels proud. In the afternoon, the rhythm slows. The Mediterranean heat is oppressive. Many people take the meridatio, a short nap. The thermopolium becomes quieter. Marcus uses this time to prepare for the evening, restock, clean. His assistant washes the pots, scrubs the marble counter, sweeps the stone floor. But there are always some customers even in the hottest hours. travelers who have just arrived in the city, lost and hungry, workers who cannot stop. Work does not wait. Children sent by their mothers to fetch food to take home. Marcus serves them all with the same patience. Have you ever thought about that? About how modern fast food workers deal with hundreds of customers a day, each with their own stories, needs, moods. It is emotional work as much as physical. Marcus does this without customer service training, without corporate manuals. He simply understands instinctively that treating people well is good for everyone. There are difficult moments too. Drunk customers who become aggressive. Disputes over prices. Accusations that the food was bad, that it caused stomach pain. Marcus handles this with diplomacy when he can, with firmness when necessary. He has a reputation to protect, but he also cannot let abusive customers ruin the environment for everyone else. Once, a customer accused Marcus of serving spoiled meat. The accusation was false. Marcus was sure the meat was fresh, but the customer made a scene, shouted, threatened to take the case to the aediles, local magistrates. Marcus, instead of fighting, offered full reimbursement and a free meal. The customer accepted, grumbling, and left. It cost Marcus money, but it saved his reputation. Other customers who witnessed it saw his generosity, his willingness to do the right thing. It was worth it. Have you ever had to swallow your pride like that? Give in to a dispute even knowing you were right, just to keep the peace? It is a skill business owners learn quickly in any era. As the sun begins to set, a new type of customer appears. People looking not just for food, but for company. The Thermopolium becomes a social place. Groups of friends gather, share jugs of wine, talk about their day. There is laughter, there are heated debates about chariot races, the Romans were sports fanatics. There is gossip about who is having an affair with whom. Marcus allows this up to a point. It is good for business. The longer people stay, the more they drink. But he also needs to stay alert. When voices get too loud, when someone has clearly drunk too much, he intervenes gently. Perhaps it is time to go home, friend. Usually, it works. Sometimes it does not. And he needs to be firmer. There is an art to managing a social space. You need to balance hospitality with order, profit with responsibility. Marcus learned this over years. His father taught him, take care of people and they will take care of you. It is a simple principle, but a profound one. When night finally falls and Marcus closes the heavy wooden doors, he is exhausted, but also satisfied. Another day, hundreds of people fed, dozens of conversations, countless small moments of human connection. He counts his coins, sets aside what he needs to buy ingredients tomorrow, stores the rest. It is not a fortune, but it is enough. It is honest. It is his. But not all Thermopolia are like Marcus's. Some have shadier reputations, serve more questionable purposes. What happens when fast food mixes with the darker aspects of Roman urban life? Not all Thermopolia were welcoming places like Marcus's. Let's walk, mentally, to a different part of Pompeii. The streets here are narrower, darker even during the day. The buildings lean over one another, blocking out the sun. The smell is different. Less fresh bread, more urine, and accumulated garbage. You are in the poor neighborhood, where the rules are looser and life is harder. Here, there is a different Thermopolium. Let's call it the Red Boar, not because it has an official name, but because there is a faded fresco of a red boar painted on the outer wall. The owner, Sextus, is not like Marcus. He is older, more tired, less concerned with reputation. He serves what he has, charges what he can, and does not ask many questions. The food here is cheaper, but also of lower quality. The puls is watery, the bread is from yesterday, or 3 days ago. The wine is so diluted it barely has any color. But the prices are low, and for the poorest of Pompeii, slaves with a few saved coins, temporary workers, people on the margins of society, it is what they can afford. But food is not really the main business of the Red Boar. At night, the place transforms. Improvised tables appear in dark corners, dice begin to roll, coins change hands quickly. Gambling was technically illegal in Rome, except during the Saturnalia festival, but this law was widely ignored, especially in neighborhoods where authorities rarely ventured. Have you ever been to a place where you feel that normal rules do not apply? Where there is a nervous energy, a feeling that anything could happen? The Red Boar has that atmosphere. It is not necessarily dangerous. In most nights, it is just poor people trying to win a few extra coins, or at least have some fun before returning to their difficult lives. But sometimes things escalate. Disputes over games become fights. Knives are drawn. Blood is spilled on the stone floor. Sextus usually manages to calm things down. He is large, intimidating, and known for not tolerating serious violence in his establishment. But it does not always work. Pompeii has its share of urban violence, and Thermopolia, like the Red Boar, are often the scene. Graffiti found on Pompeii's walls tells these stories. Here, Lucius stabbed Gaius over 3 asses. Restituta is a thief and a prostitute. Do not trust Sextus's wine. He will rob you while you sleep. These inscriptions, scrawled by anonymous customers, are windows into the city's underworld. There is also the question of prostitution. Many Thermopolia, especially the poorer ones, had rooms in the back or upstairs where prostitutes worked. It was not officially part of the business, but it was tolerated, sometimes even encouraged. Prostitutes attracted customers, who then bought food and drink. It was an economic symbiosis. This may sound shocking, but it was reality. Prostitution was legal and regulated in Rome. Prostitutes paid taxes, had certain legal protections, though limited, and were a visible part of urban life. Thermopolia were often meeting points because they offered relative privacy and anonymity. Have you ever thought about how morality and legality changed drastically between cultures and eras? What was perfectly normal in Rome, slavery, regulated prostitution, gambling in bars, would be illegal or deeply controversial today. And vice versa. Things we consider normal today would have shocked the Romans. But not everything in the Red Boar is sordid. There are also moments of genuine humanity. Sextus, despite his rough appearance, sometimes lets customers who are very poor eat for free. He knows what hunger is. He grew up a slave, was freed by his former owner, and built this business from nothing. He is not sentimental, but he is also not cruel. There is a regular prostitute named Flora who works upstairs. She is older, tired, but still has regular clients. Sextus treats her with respect, ensures she eats well, sometimes protects her from violent clients. It is not love, it is not even quite friendship, but it is a form of mutual care. They are both survivors in the same harsh world. Have you ever known people like that? Whom society marginalizes, but who have their own support networks, their own forms of dignity? Poor Romans created these networks. The Thermopolium was often the center of them, a place to eat, drink, gamble, work, connect. The authorities knew about places like the Red Boar. Occasionally, there were raids. The aediles would appear with guards, arrest some gamblers, confiscate dice, fine Sextus. He would pay the fine, wait a few days, and then everything would go back to normal. It was a game. The authorities needed to be seen doing something, but they did not really want to close all these places. Where would the poor go? What would they do? Better to let them have their small vices in known places than push them toward more clandestine and dangerous activities. Does that not sound familiar? the eternal tension between law and order versus social reality, between what society officially condemns and what it tacitly tolerates. The Romans dealt with these contradictions just as we deal with them today. There were also Thermopolia specialized in specific clienteles. Some were known for serving mainly slaves, places where slaves with their master's permission could spend their small savings. Others were frequented mainly by foreigners, Greek merchants, Egyptian sailors, Syrian traders. These places served foods from their homelands, spoke their languages, offered a piece of home far from home. Pompeii was a cosmopolitan city. It was at the crossroads of trade routes, had an active port, attracted people from all over the Mediterranean, and wherever people of different cultures meet, food becomes a bridge, a point of connection. A Syrian Thermopolian might serve pita bread, cumin-seasoned chickpeas, roasted lamb. A Greek one might offer moussaka, olives, feta cheese. Roman fast food was, in fact, incredibly diverse. Have you ever noticed how immigrant neighborhoods in modern cities have the best restaurants? How food is often the first thing one culture shares with another? The Romans experienced this constantly. They were curious, adventurous in their tastes. They adopted dishes from conquered cultures, adapted them, made them their own. But there were limits to this tolerance. Certain groups were viewed with suspicion. Christians, for example, were a small and persecuted minority in the 1st century. They gathered secretly, sometimes in discreet Thermopolia, to share communal meals, what would eventually become the Eucharist. Roman authorities saw these gatherings as potentially subversive. Worshipping a different god was one thing. Refusing to worship Roman gods and the emperor was treason. There is no evidence that Thermopolia in Pompeii were used by Christians. The city was destroyed in 79 AD when Christianity was still extremely marginal, but in other cities of the empire, especially later, these establishments sometimes served as meeting points for minority religious groups. Food and faith have always been intertwined. As night advances in the Red Boar, the atmosphere becomes denser. Smoke from oil lamps fills the air. Voices get louder, more slurred by wine. Someone begins to sing an obscene song, and others join in. There is laughter, there is melancholy. There is the feeling of people trying to forget for a few hours the difficulties of their lives. Sextus watches it all from his post behind the counter. He has seen this 1,000 times. He knows when to let things run, when to intervene. It is a skill that cannot be taught, only learned through years of experience. He is, in his way, a pillar of the community, not respectable perhaps, but necessary. When he finally closes, much later than Marcus, he is exhausted in a different way. It is not just physical tiredness, but emotional. Dealing with the darker side of human nature every night takes its toll. But he comes back tomorrow and the day after because it is what he knows how to do. It is his life. But what happened when things went really wrong? When food caused illness? When poor hygiene led to outbreaks? How did the Romans deal with food safety without any knowledge of bacteria or viruses? Let's talk about something the Romans could not see, but what affected them constantly: foodborne illness. Imagine, you are a regular customer at a Thermopolium. You eat there almost every day. One day, you order your favorite lentil stew. A few hours later, you are doubled over in pain, vomiting with severe diarrhea. What happened? The Romans did not know about bacteria. They did not have microscopes, did not understand microbial contamination. But they knew through observation and experience that certain things caused illness. Food that smelled bad was dangerous. Water from certain fountains caused disease. Meat left in the sun for too long was risky. They developed practices based on trial and error, not on science, but that often worked. The biggest challenge was preservation. Without refrigeration, meat and fish spoiled quickly. The Romans used salt extensively. Salting meat and fish was the primary form of preservation. They also used vinegar, olive oil, and fermentation. Garum, that fermented fish sauce, was actually quite safe because the fermentation process and high salt content killed many dangerous bacteria. But not all Thermopolium owners were careful. Some, especially the poorer or less scrupulous ones, served food that was on the edge. They masked the taste of spoiling meat with strong spices and extra garum. It worked most of the time. But sometimes it did not work, and people got sick. Have you ever had food poisoning? That horrible feeling of your body rebelling, expelling everything? The Romans experienced this regularly. It was so common that they had multiple words for different types of stomach problems. It was not seen as something extraordinary, just as a risk of life, but sometimes it was more serious. Foodborne illness outbreaks could affect dozens of people. If a Thermopolium served contaminated fish, everyone who ate there that day would get sick. The establishment's reputation would be destroyed. The owner could be fined, even imprisoned if authorities determined gross negligence. There was also the problem of water. Pompeii had an impressive aqueduct system. Fresh water was brought from springs in the mountains through stone channels. Public fountains supplied water to the population. But stagnant water, especially in cisterns or pots, could become a breeding ground for disease. The Romans knew this instinctively. They preferred running water and frequently boiled water before using it in cooking. The diluted wine that Romans drank constantly was not just cultural preference, it was also a way of making water safer. The alcohol in wine, even diluted, had antimicrobial properties. It did not kill all bacteria, but it helped. The Romans did not know why it worked, but they knew it worked. Have you ever thought about how many cultural practices have practical foundations that have been forgotten? Eating well-cooked pork, avoiding raw shellfish in certain seasons, drinking alcohol instead of water. Many of these practices developed because they helped prevent disease, even if people did not understand the mechanism. There were also parasites. Without proper sewage treatment, without hand hygiene, the Romans did wash their hands, but not with antibacterial soap. Intestinal parasites were extremely common. Studies of Roman latrines found evidence of worms, tapeworms, and other parasites in almost every sample. Eating at Thermopolia, where hygiene varied enormously, increased the risk. The Romans had treatments for parasites. Herbs like wormwood, garlic, and pomegranate seeds were used. Did they work? Sometimes. Garlic, for example, has real anti-parasitic properties, but many treatments were based on superstition or incorrect medical theory. Roman medicine was a mixture of practical observation, Greek philosophy, and pure guesswork. There was also accidental poisoning. The Romans used lead extensively, in water pipes, in cooking pots, even in sweeteners. Lead acetate, called sapa, was used to sweeten wine. Chronic lead poisoning caused a variety of health problems, but the Romans did not make the connection. They knew that working with lead was dangerous, but did not realize that using lead utensils was too. Thermopolia generally used ceramic, not lead, for cooking and serving, so they were relatively safe in that regard. But the wine they served, especially cheaper wine, frequently contained dangerous levels of lead. Drinking that wine daily, over years, would have cumulative effects, headaches, digestive problems, even neurological damage. Have you ever thought about the invisible dangers in your own food? Pesticides, microplastics, chemical additives? We have regulations and tests, but there are still risks we do not fully understand. The Romans lived with much more uncertainty, but also with less anxiety about it. What you do not know cannot worry you. There were attempts at regulation. The aediles, local magistrates, were responsible for overseeing markets and food establishments. They could inspect Thermopolia, check weights and measures, fine owners for fraudulent practices. But with 80 Thermopolia in Pompeii and only a few aediles, oversight was irregular at best. The real regulation came from reputation and community. If a Thermopolium regularly made people sick, the news spread quickly. In a small city where everyone knew each other, reputation was everything. Owners who valued their long-term business were careful. Those who were desperate or dishonest took risks. There were also superstitious beliefs about food and illness. Some Romans believed that eating certain foods in specific combinations caused imbalances in the body's humors, a Greek medical theory adopted by the Romans. Others believed illness was punishment from the gods for religious offenses. These beliefs influenced what people ate and how they perceived disease. But there was also impressive practical knowledge. The Romans knew that wounds needed to be cleaned, that certain foods helped in recovery from illness, that exercise and diet affected health. Roman doctors, although limited by lack of anatomical and microbiological knowledge, were surprisingly effective in many treatments. A Roman doctor named Galen, who lived in the 2nd century AD, wrote extensively about diet and health. He recommended balanced diets, avoiding excess, eating fresh food. His advice, although based on incorrect medical theory, was often sensible. He would have approved of a well-run Thermopolium like Marcus's and condemned places like the Red Boar. As you think about all this, the invisible dangers, the lack of scientific knowledge, the reliance on trial and error, you may wonder, how did the Romans survive? The answer is, many did not. Life expectancy was low, partly due to disease, partly due to lack of modern medicine. But those who survived were hardy, adapted, and surprisingly healthy within the limitations of their time. And there were moments of pure culinary joy that made all the risks worthwhile. Festivals where special food was served, family celebrations, the simple pleasure of a well-made dish on a difficult day. Food was not just fuel, it was culture, it was connection, it was life. But how exactly were these dishes prepared? What cooking techniques did the Romans use, and how do those techniques compare to ours today? Let's step into the kitchen of a Thermopolium. Not the public area with the marble counter, but the back, where the magic really happens. It is a small space, hot, full of smoke. In the center, a focus, a brick stove with several openings where charcoal embers burn constantly. Above, bronze cauldrons hang from iron hooks. Around the walls, shelves with ceramic pots containing ingredients, salt, garum, olive oil, vinegar, dried herbs. The first thing you notice is the heat. Without modern ventilation, without exhaust fans, the smoke and heat are trapped. The cook, let's call him Felix, is sweating, his face glistening in the light of the embers. He's been working for hours and will continue for hours more. But his hands move with confidence, with the precision that comes from years of practice. Felix is preparing puls, the grain porridge that is the basis of so many meals. He starts with far, an ancient type of wheat that has been soaked in water overnight to soften. He pours the grains into a cauldron of boiling water, adds a generous pinch of salt, and begins to stir. This is crucial. If you stop stirring, the puls sticks to the bottom and burns. Felix stirs at a constant, meditative rhythm while chatting with his assistant. The stirring motion is hypnotic. Can you imagine it? The soft sound of liquid bubbling, the wooden spoon scraping against bronze, the aroma of grains cooking. It is comforting, ancestral. People have cooked grains like this for thousands of years, long before Rome, and will continue to for thousands of years after. While the puls cooks, Felix prepares a lentil stew. He starts by sautéing chopped leeks in olive oil. The smell is immediate, pungent, delicious. He adds lentils that have been washed and checked for stones, an essential step. Ancient lentils often came with small stones mixed in. Then water, salt, and a generous amount of garum. Here is the secret. Garum is not just salt, it is complexity. It is depth. It is what transforms a simple stew into something memorable. Felix also adds a bit of defrutum, that reduced and sweet grape must, to balance the saltiness. Sweet and salty, a combination that the Romans loved and that we still love today. He adds herbs, fresh coriander, mint, a bit of cumin. No precise measurements. Felix cooks by instinct, by experience. He tastes, adjusts, tastes again. This is art as much as science. Each batch is slightly different, adapted to the ingredients available that day, to the cook's mood, even to the weather. On humid days you need more salt, on dry days less. Do you cook like that? By instinct, by taste, adjusting as you go? Or do you follow recipes rigidly? The Romans did not have cookbooks as we know them, although there was a famous cookbook attributed to Apicius. It was for elite cuisine, not for Thermopolia. They learned by watching, practicing, developing what modern chefs call muscle memory. While the stew simmers gently, Felix turns to the meat. Today he has chicken, a relative luxury. He cuts the chicken into pieces, seasons with salt and garum, and places it in a shallow pan with hot olive oil. The sizzle is satisfying, the aroma makes your mouth water. He lets the pieces brown on one side, then turns them. No rush. Cooking too fast makes the meat tough. Once browned, he adds wine, cheap, sour wine, perfect for cooking. The wine deglazes the pan, lifting the flavorful bits stuck to the bottom. He adds chopped onions, garlic, more herbs. Then a bit of honey for sweetness, vinegar for acidity. Sweet, sour, salty, umami. All the flavor notes that make food interesting. Have you ever noticed how modern cooking rediscovered these flavor combinations? How celebrated chefs talk about balancing sweet and salty, acidic and fatty. The Romans knew this intuitively. They did not have the scientific language, but they had the palate, the experience. Felix covers the pan and lets the chicken cook slowly. Meanwhile, he checks on the puls. It is thickening perfectly. He adds a drizzle of olive oil at the end to give shine and richness. Some cooks also add grated cheese, but Felix prefers to let customers add it if they want. He keeps a pot of grated pecorino cheese on the counter for this purpose. There is also bread to prepare. Felix does not bake bread. That is the baker's job. But he buys fresh bread every morning and keeps it warm near the fire. Sometimes he cuts thick slices and lightly toasts them over the embers, then rubs them with garlic and drizzles olive oil. It is simple, but incredibly delicious. Modern Italians call this bruschetta and serve it as a sophisticated appetizer. Felix serves it as a basic side dish. Roman cooking technique was limited by the tools available. They did not have ovens in Thermopolia, too expensive, too dangerous. Everything was cooked over open fire, boiled, sautéed, grilled, but within these limitations they were incredibly creative. They used patini, shallow ceramic dishes that could be placed directly over embers, functioning as pans. They used iron skewers to grill meats and fish. They used wicker baskets to cook by steam over boiling water. Each technique had its purpose, its specific result. Felix learned all this from his father, who learned from his father. It is knowledge passed down through generations, refined, adapted, but essentially unchanged. There is something profoundly comforting in that. The idea that you are doing something the same way your ancestors did, connecting across time through the simple act of cooking. But not everything was traditional. The Romans were also enthusiastic experimenters. They adopted ingredients and techniques from conquered cultures, spices from India, preservation techniques from Greece, dishes from North Africa. Everything was incorporated, adapted, Romanized. Felix, for example, learned a technique from an Egyptian cook who passed through Pompeii years ago, adding a bit of toasted cumin to the lentil stew at the end. The cumin is toasted dry in a small pan until fragrant, then ground and sprinkled over the stew. It completely transforms the dish, adds a layer of complexity that customers love, even without knowing exactly what it is. Have you ever had that experience of tasting something and thinking, what is that incredible flavor, without being able to identify it? The Romans played with this constantly. They loved surprising the palate, creating layers of flavor that revealed themselves slowly. There were also trade secrets. If the stew was too liquid, Felix added crumbled old bread to thicken it. If it was too thick, more water or broth. If it was bland, more garum. If it was too salty, a bit of honey or defrutum to balance it. Every problem had a solution, learned through trial and error. Cleaning was constant. Felix and his assistant washed pots and pans continuously, scrubbed the counter, swept the floor. Not from knowledge of germs, but because dirt attracted rats and insects, and because customers did not want to eat in visibly dirty places. Basic hygiene was as much about appearance as about health. As the day progresses, Felix falls into a rhythm. Cook, serve, clean, repeat. It is hard work, but there is satisfaction in it. Every plate that leaves his kitchen feeds someone, sustains someone, maybe even brightens someone's day. It is not glamorous work, but it is essential. It is honored. It is his. When night finally comes and the last customer is served, Felix cleans his kitchen one final time. He covers the embers with ashes so they retain some heat until tomorrow. He covers the ingredient pots to keep insects out. He hangs his pans and spoons. Everything has its place, its order. He is exhausted but also satisfied. Another day, hundreds of meals prepared, no serious complaints. He counts that as success. Tomorrow he will do it all again with small variations, small improvements. It is an eternal cycle, comforting in its predictability. But how did customers actually experience this food? What was the act of eating in a thermopolium really like? And how does that compare to our modern fast food experience? Let's mentally experience eating in a thermopolium. You have just finished a hard morning of work. Perhaps you are a carpenter, or a market seller, or a dock worker at the harbour. Your stomach growls. You have a few coins in your pocket. You head to Marcus's Thermopolium, your favourite. You approach the marble counter. Marcus recognizes you immediately. "The usual?" he asks. You nod. He is already moving, filling a ceramic bowl with steaming puls, adding a piece of bread, filling a terracotta cup with diluted wine. The process takes less than a minute. You hand over 2 bronze coins. Marcus accepts them, drops them into a wooden box beneath the counter. You take your bowl and your cup. There are no tables, no chairs. You eat, standing up, leaning against the counter, or perhaps step back a few steps to make room for the next customer. The bowl is hot in your hands. You blow gently on the puls before bringing the first spoonful to your mouth. The flavor is comforting, familiar. Soft grains, lightly salted with a touch of olive oil. It is not exciting, but it is exactly what you need. You dip the bread into the puls, letting it absorb the liquid, then bite. The texture is satisfying. The bread, soft and moist, the grains creamy. You take a sip of wine. It is sour, diluted, but refreshing. It clears your palate, prepares you for the next bite. You eat quickly. You have work waiting, no time to savor. In 5 minutes, you are finished. You return the bowl and cup to Marcus. They will be washed and reused. Nod in thanks and leave. That is the typical experience. Quick, efficient, functional. It is not about leisure or prolonged pleasure. It is about necessity. You were hungry. Now you are satisfied. You can return to work. It is exactly what fast food should be. But compare that to a modern fast food experience. You enter a McDonald's. You look at the illuminated menu above the counter. You order through a touchscreen or to a cashier. You pay with a card. You wait a few minutes. Your order is delivered on a plastic tray, wrapped in paper, in a disposable cup. You sit at a plastic table. You eat, usually alone, perhaps looking at your phone. You throw everything in the trash and leave. The differences are obvious: technology, hygiene, comfort. But the similarities are more profound: speed, convenience, affordable price, standardization. Both serve the same fundamental purpose: feeding busy people quickly and cheaply. But there were also different experiences in Thermopolia. If you had more time, more money, you could order something more elaborate. You could order the lentil stew with pieces of meat. You could order better wine, less diluted. You could stay longer, talk with other customers, with Marcus. Some customers brought their own bowls and cups from home, nicer ceramic, perhaps with decorations. It was a form of status, of showing that you had means. Marcus did not mind. Actually, he appreciated it. It meant you were a regular customer, someone who valued the experience enough to bring your own utensils. There was also the option of takeaway. You could ask Marcus to fill your own container with puls or stew. You took it home, shared it with your family. This was common, especially for women who did not feel comfortable eating in public. They sent children or slaves to fetch food. The sensory experience was rich. The smell of food cooking, the sound of conversations in Latin, the touch of hot ceramic, the taste of complex flavors, the sight of colorful frescoes on the walls. All the senses were engaged. It was not just about filling your stomach, it was a complete experience, even if brief. Have you ever noticed how we eat today? Often distracted, looking at screens, eating mechanically without really savoring. The Romans, even eating fast, were more present. There were no digital distractions. You were there, in that moment, with that food, with those people around you. There were also rituals. Some Romans made a small offering to the gods before eating, poured a few drops of wine on the floor, muttered a quick prayer. It was not mandatory, especially in a casual Thermopolium, but some did it. It was a form of gratitude, of acknowledging that food was a blessing, not a guaranteed right. Have you ever thanked your food? Not necessarily in a religious way, but simply recognized the chain of work that brought it to you, i.e. the farmers, the transporters, the cooks. The Romans, living closer to the source of their food, perhaps had a more visceral appreciation for this. There were also social aspects. Thermopolia were places where news was exchanged, where you found out about events in the city, about job opportunities, about gossip. Marcus, behind the counter, was a node in the city's information network. He heard everything, saw everyone. He knew who was looking for work, who was selling something, who was having problems. You trusted Marcus. Not just to serve good food, but to be discreet, not to spread your secrets, to give occasional advice. He was, in his way, a pillar of the community, not an official leader, but someone essential to the neighborhood's social functioning. Compare that to modern fast food workers. They are often invisible, interchangeable, undervalued. You do not know their names, you do not trust them with your secrets. The relationship is purely transactional. Something was lost in that modernization, that efficiency. Human connection was sacrificed for speed and scale. But not everything was idyllic. There were also unpleasant moments, rude customers who complained, who demanded, who treated Marcus like a servant. He had to swallow his pride, smile, serve. It was no different from service workers today, dealing with difficult customers, maintaining professional composure even when they wanted to scream. There was also the ever-present social hierarchy. When a wealthy customer entered, others stepped back, gave space. Not by law, but by custom, by social expectation. The wealthy expected deference and usually received it. Marcus treated them with extra respect, not just because they paid better, but because offending them could have consequences. They had connections, power, influence. Have you ever felt that? that awareness of social hierarchy of who has power and who does not. The Romans lived with this constantly. Society was rigidly stratified: citizens, non-citizens, freedmen, slaves. Your position determined how you were treated, where you could go, what you could do. A thermopolium was one of the few places where these lines blurred a bit, where everyone ate the same food. But even there, hierarchies persisted. As you finish your imaginary meal and leave Marcus's thermopolium, you feel satisfied. Not just physically, but in some deeper way. You were seen, recognized, cared for. For a few minutes, you were not just another anonymous worker. You were Marcus's customer, part of his community, part of something larger. That feeling, that need for belonging, for connection, is profoundly human. Thermopolia served not just food, but also that social need. They were, in their way, as important as temples or forums to the functioning of Roman urban life. But what happened to all this? Why did Thermopolia disappear? And what can we learn from their rise and fall? Let's move forward in time. It is August 24th, 79 AD, a morning like any other in Pompeii. Marcus opens his thermopolium, lights the fire, prepares for another day. The sky is strange, or there is a haze in the air, a sulphurous smell. Mount Vesuvius, that familiar mountain on the horizon, is smoking more than usual, but it has smoked intermittently for days. No one is particularly worried. Around noon, everything changes, a massive explosion. The top of Vesuvius erupts, sending a column of ash and pumice kilometers high into the sky. The sun is blocked out. Pumice begins to fall like deadly rain. Panic in the streets, people running, screaming, trying to find shelter. Marcus tries to protect his business, but quickly realizes its futility. This is not an ordinary earthquake, not a storm. This is something apocalyptic. He grabs what he can, a few coins, a cloak, and runs. He does not look back. His thermopolium, 3 generations of family work, is about to be buried. In the next 24 hours, Pompeii is completely buried under meters of ash and pumice. About 2,000 people die. Those who could not flee in time, those who returned to save belongings, those who took shelter in buildings that collapsed. The city simply disappears, forgotten for centuries. But here is the cruel and beautiful irony. In destroying Pompeii, Vesuvius also preserved it. The ash sealed everything in a frozen moment in time. When archaeologists began excavating in the 18th century, they found an intact city. Buildings with frescoes still gleaming, carbonized bread still in ovens, and thermopolia, dozens of them, with their marble counters, their terracotta pots, even preserved food residue. These thermopolia tell us stories that no ancient text could. They show us how ordinary people lived, ate, connected. They are windows into a world that would otherwise be completely lost. The thermopolium discovered in 2020, with its vibrant frescoes and identifiable foods, is particularly extraordinary. It is as if it closed yesterday, not 2,000 years ago. But even without Vesuvius, thermopolia would eventually have disappeared. Why? Because the Roman world was changing. In the centuries after Pompeii, the Roman Empire faced mounting crises: barbarian invasions, economic collapse, political fragmentation. Cities shrank, trade diminished. The vibrant urban life that sustained Thermopolia began to vanish. Christianity also played a role. The new religion viewed with suspicion the more hedonistic aspects of Roman culture: excessive banquets, drunkenness, the mixing of food with gambling and prostitution. Thermopolia, especially the seedier ones, were seen as places of sin. They were not directly prohibited, but they were discouraged, marginalized. As the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, much of its urban infrastructure went with it. Aqueducts were not maintained, roads deteriorated. Long-distance trade, which brought exotic spices and ingredients, practically stopped. A money economy gave way to barter. In this new world, Thermopolia no longer made sense. In the Middle Ages, street food did not disappear completely, but it changed. Ambulant vendors sold pies, breads, beer. Taverns served meals. But the specific institution of the Thermopolium, that marble counter with embedded pots, that particular combination of fast food and social space, was lost. Have you ever thought about how social institutions can simply disappear? How practices that seemed eternal can become obsolete in just a few generations? The Romans, who ate in Thermopolia daily, never imagined that one day no one would know what they were, that future archaeologists would have to reconstruct their purpose from ruins. But here is the fascinating thing: the need that Thermopolia filled never disappeared. People still needed fast, cheap, convenient food. So, in each era, new forms arose. Medieval street vendors, 18th century coffee houses, 19th century lunch counters. And, finally, in the 20th century, the modern fast food explosion: McDonald's, KFC, Subway, and countless others. Are these modern establishments Thermopolia? In essence, yes, they serve the same purpose, feeding busy people quickly and cheaply. But they lost something that Thermopolia had: that personal connection, that sense of community, that knowledge that Marcus knew your name and your favorite order. Modernization brought efficiency, hygiene, standardization. You can eat at a McDonald's in Tokyo, New York, or São Paulo and have essentially the same experience. That is impressive in its own way, but it is also, in a sense, sad. The particularity, the individuality, the human connection were sacrificed. There are movements today trying to recover some of that. Farm-to-table restaurants emphasizing local ingredients and relationships with producers. Neighborhood cafes where baristas know customers by name. Street food markets celebrating culinary diversity. They are attempts, conscious or not, to recreate what Thermopolia offered: good food, human connection, sense of place. The Romans were not perfect. Their society was brutal in many ways: slavery, violence, extreme inequality. But they understood something about community, about the importance of shared spaces, about how food can be more than just nutrition. Thermopolia were physical manifestations of that understanding. When you look at the ruins of a Thermopolium in Pompeii today, and they are there, preserved, open to visitors, you are looking at more than stone and ceramic. You are looking at thousands of shared meals, thousands of conversations, thousands of moments of human connection. You are looking at life as it was lived, not by emperors or generals, but by ordinary people. There is something profoundly moving in that. These people, whose names we mostly do not know, who lived and died 2,000 years ago, were not so different from us. They were hungry, so they ate. They were tired, so they sought comfort. They were alone, so they looked for company. Thermopolia met all these needs. And perhaps, just perhaps, by studying Thermopolia, by understanding what they were and why they mattered, we can learn something about our own needs, our own communities, our own ways of connecting through food. The past is not just past. It is a mirror, showing us who we are, where we come from, and perhaps where we are going. But there is one last question to consider. What does it all mean? What can we take from this journey through the streets of Pompeii, through the Thermopolia, through the lives of people long gone? Let's make one final imaginary visit. You are in Pompeii, but not ancient Pompeii. You are in the ruins today, a tourist among thousands. The Mediterranean sun shines on ancient stones. You walk down streets of cobblestones worn by cartwheels 2,000 years ago. And then you see it, a perfectly preserved Thermopolium. The marble counter is still there, with its circular openings where terracotta pots once sat. The frescoes on the walls, though faded, still show ducks and fish and wine amphorae. You can almost hear the buzz of voices, almost smell the puls cooking, almost see Marcus behind the counter, smiling, serving, living. But it is silent now. Only the wind, the distant sound of other tourists, the click of cameras. The life that filled this place has been extinct for millennia. And yet, somehow, it persists, in the stones, in the paintings, in the stories that archaeologists and historians have patiently reconstructed. You take a photo, you read the informational plaque, you move on, but something stays with you, a sense of connection across time, of human continuity. The people who ate here were not aliens from another world. They were people, like you, with the same basic needs, the same desires, the same fears. Think about it. In 2,000 years, what will remain of our civilization? Our glass and steel skyscrapers will probably not survive like Roman stone structures. Our digital records may be unrecoverable. But perhaps, just perhaps, some future archaeologist will find the remains of a McDonald's, see the Golden Arch, and try to reconstruct what it meant, how it worked, what role it played in our lives. And what will they conclude? That we were a society obsessed with speed and convenience, that we valued efficiency over quality, that we were so busy, so rushed, that we barely had time to eat properly. Perhaps, but hopefully, they will also see that, like the Romans, we were trying to meet fundamental human needs the best way we knew how. The story of Thermopolia is ultimately a story about adaptation. The Romans faced a challenge: how to feed dense urban populations without private kitchens. They created a solution: strategically located fast food establishments serving affordable and nutritious meals. It worked. It worked so well that it became an integral part of Roman urban life. We face similar challenges today. How do we feed billions of people in megacities? How do we balance convenience with nutrition, speed with sustainability? Our solutions are different. Global fast food chains, delivery apps, pre-prepared meals. But the fundamental challenge is the same. Can we learn from the Romans? Perhaps. They understood the importance of local ingredients, of seasonality, of balanced flavors. They valued social connection, community, the human aspect of eating together. They knew that food is not just fuel, it is culture, it is identity, it is life. But they also had limitations we do not. Without refrigeration, without knowledge of microbiology, without modern food safety regulations. Many people got sick. Many died of diseases that are now easily preventable. We should not romanticize the past too much. The ideal, perhaps, is a synthesis, modern efficiency and hygiene combined with the human connection and quality of ingredients that Thermopolia at their best offered. Some establishments today achieve this. Small family restaurants, farmers' markets, neighborhood cafes where you are known. They are rare, but they exist and they are precious. Do you have such a place in your life? A place where you are recognized, where food is made with care, where you feel part of a community? If so, cherish it. If not, perhaps seek one out. Or better yet, create one. Cook for friends. Share meals. Slow down enough to really savor, to really connect. The Romans, for all their faults, understood that eating is a social act, an act of community. Even in a thermopolium, even eating quickly, standing up, there was a moment of connection, unarmed with the owner, with other customers, with the city around you. We, with all our technology, often eat alone, looking at screens, disconnected. There is melancholy in that, but there is also hope. Because if Thermopolia could exist 2,000 years ago, if they could serve their communities so well for so long, then surely we can create something similar today. Not exact replicas, the world has changed too much, but something that captures the spirit, good food, human connection, sense of place. As you mentally step away from that Thermopolium in ruins, that ancient street in Pompeii, you carry something with you. An appreciation for human continuity, for how basic needs span millennia. An understanding that we are part of a story much longer than our individual lives. A hope that just as the Romans found their solutions, we will find ours. And perhaps, just perhaps, the next time you eat something quick, something simple, you will pause for a moment, you will think about all the people throughout history who did the same. You will feel that connection across time, you will savor not just the food, but the moment, the shared humanity of it all. The Thermopolia of Pompeii are silent now, their embers long extinguished, their voices long stilled, but their echoes remain. In the stones, in the stories, and in every time we gather to share a meal, no matter how simple, no matter how quick. Because in the end, it is about that. Not just food, but connection, about community, about the wonderful stubbornness of human life continuing on meal after meal, generation after generation, across all the centuries. And with that thought, you can finally rest, letting the ancient streets of Pompeii fade into dreams, knowing that you have touched, for a moment, something eternal. As you settle more deeply into your rest, let us gently reflect on everything we have discovered together on this journey through time and flavor. What really were the Thermopolia? They were more than just places to eat. They were nodes in a complex social network, meeting points where urban life condensed into its most essential moments. They were the recognition of a simple truth, that people need to eat, and that how we eat reveals who we are. Think about the ingenuity of it all. The Romans, without any modern technology, created a system that fed thousands daily. They understood logistics, economics, human psychology. They knew where to place Thermopolia on busy corners, near markets, how to price, affordable but profitable, what to serve, nutritious, flavorful, fast. They solved problems we are still solving today. But beyond practical ingenuity, there was something deeper. There was the recognition that food is community, that the act of feeding someone is an act of care, of connection. Marcus, behind his counter, was not just selling puls, he was holding his neighborhood together, one meal at a time. There is a lesson there for us, in our era of app delivery, of solitary meals, of food as fuel to be consumed efficiently. We have lost something. We have lost the Marcus who knows our name, the Thermopolium, where we are recognized, the feeling of belonging to a place through the shared ritual of eating. But the lesson is not simply the past was better. It was not. It was harder, more dangerous, more unequal. The lesson is that there are aspects of human experience that are timeless and that are worth preserving even as we move forward. Connection, community, quality, care. Can you incorporate this into your own life? Perhaps not by opening a Thermopolium, though that would be fascinating, but in small ways. Knowing your cafe barista's name, cooking for friends, buying from local producers, slowing down enough to really savor your food, to really see the people around you. The Romans taught us that fast food does not have to be bad food, that convenience does not have to mean lack of quality, that you can feed people quickly and still do it with care, with skill, with respect. Thermopolia at their best achieved this. Some places today achieve it too. They deserve our support, our loyalty, our recognition. There is also a broader reflection on civilization. Pompeii was destroyed in a day. Centuries of development, of culture, of life, erased by a volcanic eruption. And yet something survived. The stones survived. The stories survived. The human essence survived, preserved in ash, waiting to be rediscovered. What does that tell us? That we are fragile, yes. That civilizations can fall, that everything we build can be destroyed. But also that there is something resilient in the human spirit, something that persists, through catastrophes, through centuries, through unimaginable change. The Romans are gone, but their stories remain. Their lessons remain. Their humanity remains. And perhaps that is the most comforting reflection of all, that no matter how different we are in technology, in culture, in circumstances, we are fundamentally the same. We are hungry, so we eat. We are tired, so we rest. We are alone, so we seek connection. These needs transcend all time, all place, all superficial difference. A Roman in a Thermopolium and you in a modern cafe are separated by 2,000 years, but united by fundamental human needs. There is something profoundly comforting in that. You are not alone, neither in space nor in time. You are part of an unbroken chain of humanity, extending backward through countless generations and forward through countless more. The Thermopolia teach us this. They show us that the things that really matter, food, connection, community, care, do not change. The forms change, the technology changes, but the essence remains. And as long as there are people, there will be need for places where we can gather, share a meal, feel that we belong. So as you drift into sleep, carry that reflection with you. You are part of something larger, something that extends through all of human time. Your needs are the needs of all humanity. Your joys are the joys that people have felt for millennia. You are connected through invisible but unbreakable threads to every person who has ever lived, who has ever eaten, who has ever sought comfort and connection. The Thermopolia of Pompeii are silent now, but their spirit lives. It lives in every shared meal, in every connection made over food, in every moment we pause to savor, to appreciate, to be present. It lives in you as you rest, as you dream, as you prepare to wake tomorrow and live one more day of this extraordinary human journey. Sleep well, knowing that you are part of a story far longer and far more beautiful than you can imagine. A story that began long before you and will continue long after. A story of ordinary people doing ordinary things, eating, working, connecting, and through these ordinary things, creating something extraordinary: civilization, community, humanity. The echoes of Pompeii reach you across the centuries, whispering a simple truth: you matter. Your life matters. Your meals, your connections, your moments of joy and comfort, all of it matters. You are part of the great human tapestry, and your thread, however modest it may seem, is essential. Rest now. Let these reflections dissolve gently into dreams. And when you wake, perhaps you will see the world a little differently. Perhaps you will appreciate your next meal a little more. Perhaps you will connect with the people around you a little more deeply. Perhaps you will feel, just for a moment, that connection across time, that golden thread linking you to all who came before. The Thermopolia have taught us well. Now it is time to rest, to dream, to let these lessons settle somewhere deep inside you. Good night. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with the aroma of fresh bread, the warmth of ancient embers, and the comforting murmur of voices across the centuries, all saying the same thing. You belong, you are seen, you are part of something eternal.